Welcome to the podcast, Calley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome. I'm like, we just
We've been
like
talking
have
for
to get
30
into this.
minutes.
Every time I start talking, I think, well, we like thank God I'm recording because like I'm just gonna have to like put this in there.
Oh
Okay,
my gosh.
everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, you can obviously see the gorgeous Calley Welborn from Denver, Colorado. And if you're listening to us, this is a fine Thursday morning. We are sitting here sipping our coffee.
Yes.
We're recording a first episode after a very long hiatus. I was just telling Callie about how I've just gone on a 6-month hiatus and I thought, what the hell do I talk about being gone for so long? And you are the perfect person to have come back on because,
Thank you.
one, as you can tell, we can sit here and talk to each other forever
I
about
love it.
anything and everything. And so I wanted you to come onto my podcast because I think you're just someone who I admire professionally. I admire personally. I think what you do is so cool.
Ah,
And
Addie, thank you.
I just want to share you with all of my friends and my homies that are
Yeah.
listening to this. Callie is a Enneagram consultant. Is that technically like the professional way to say that?
I mean, yes, there's not, I don't know if there is a professional way to say it. I usually introduce myself as an Enneagram guide. I think consultant sometimes, like, I don't know. Some people love it. Some people think it's a little too, yeah, official. And and I don't use the word coach because people know best about their own life. So I'm not trying to coach them to do a certain thing. It's more about guiding them to the wisdom that already exists within them so that they can live the life they want to live.
How does one person, and okay, for anyone that's here that's like, what Enneagram, like the Enneagram guide, tell us what this is.
Oh man, I still don't have my elevator speech. For me, what the Enneagram is it's an ancient wisdom that helps us to realize that our personality is who we are not. That most of our life we misidentify our personality as the definition of who we are. And Enneagram wisdom helps us become aware that although may have been necessary and may have helped us to survive, um, it ends up ultimately blocking us from what we desire most. So just that awareness and a lot of Enneagram practice can help us release our tight hold on who we think we're supposed to be or should be or how we're supposed to show up so that we can just like live freely with ease as our authentic selves.
And that's what she does for a living, you guys. Like, are you kidding?
Yes.
That's like the coolest thing
Well,
ever.
I practice it in my life because I need it. And it's been so transformational for me that, yeah, I want to share it with everybody.
And that's how
I
you,
want everyone to realize like they are so purposely created. They are so implicitly loved and they can just be free to be themselves. And we need them to be them. Like you're amazing.
oh my gosh. Okay. And so for anyone that's like, okay, that's the definition of the Enneagram, something, and this is like the basic B breakdown of this, but you've probably heard of this before. You've probably heard your best friend be like, oh my God, I'm a 7, or that's such a 6 thing to do. So if you've ever heard anyone like describe themselves with a number, that is the Enneagram. I was introduced to the Enneagram. This was back in 2020. And we were at like a retreat, and it was just kind of like a very brief introduction. We took a quiz, it identified us. And so I had this like thought process of like, all right, well, I identified as, and I don't remember what my number was then, but I identified as that, this is what I am. And so then kind of moving forward after that, if I ever saw an Instagram post and it was like A6 does this or, whatever, uh,
Right.
I would be like, okay, I identified this. But when I met you, the first thing you told me was, we don't do tests around here. Like,
Yeah.
how can a test tell you like who you are, like a piece of paper? And I loved that because I don't know, do you remember the days of like Cosmopolitan where
Oh
it was
gosh, yes.
this quiz of what kind of girlfriend are you or whatever?
Yes.
And so that was really refreshing because listen, this is an honest space here. We've all been there. We've taken those quizzes and we've probably answered something that maybe wasn't the most accurate. You're like, this is who I want to be. But like,
Exactly. It's
that's
like I
just
see where this is going and this is the result that I want. So I'm going to respond in this way. I mean, we're smart cookies, you know?
Yep, exactly. So when I first met you and you were like, "Oh no, honey, like There is not like we're not doing tests. Like that's not how I identify you. I was instantly like I'm always attracted to someone who is like a difference maker, like a mover and shaker, like someone that does
Mm.
things a little bit differently. And you did that. So I knew right away we were gonna hit it off. But tell us how like your thoughts and how your concept of being an Enneagram guide, how you help people identify rather than taking a test what their number is.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, the Enneagram is it's like a map. It's just such rich wisdom. And so I love sharing about the Enneagram, and then people get to identify for themselves. I mean, no one knows you better than you know you. And so it's like as we're talking about the Enneagram, which has these 9 different lenses through which people see and navigate life, and it's like people start becoming aware of like, I mean, most of the time it's like jaw on the floor, like she's talking about me. I know the first time that I encountered it, like I had my head down, tears are falling out of my eyes because I'm like, why is she exposing the parts of me that I've wanted to keep hidden, my whole life that I didn't even know I wanted to keep hidden until she's saying it right now. Like so I love people. It's about self discovery.
Mhm.
So I'm sharing this information. People find themselves in it. And the reason I share all of it for people to find themselves is because we're not just one thing. We may lead with a certain type, our core Enneagram type, but all of it is, we're all of it, right? We have all of those parts of us within us. And we go to certain places in stress, and we go to certain places when we're feeling secure, when we're growing. And so it's like, if you know all of that, then you know all of the wisdom that's available to you to live a full, balanced, whole life. Like you already have everything you need. We just kind of forget
Mhm.
who we are, and so we try to be who we think we're supposed to be. And when we can remember, oh, we've already got everything. Just how can I use this in these different moments in my life and
Mhm.
practice it in my life so that I can show up with a holistic perspective. Yeah, full of balance and like peace, really, and ease. It sounds hard, but it makes life so much easier because we're not just efforting all the time to try
Right.
to be what we think we're supposed to be for other people.
Oh, okay, that's a really beautiful way to put that. Oh my
Mm.
gosh. I am going to, for all of you guys listening, in the show notes, make sure you go, during the show or at the end of the show and look at the show notes because I'm going to be attaching a episode that Callie was previously on another podcast of one of our mutual friends who we
Yes,
randomly all met. That's so crazy.
I
But
know.
in that podcast, she really goes deeper into kind of this like introduction and really specific pieces. And listen, you guys, that's not what we're doing today. So I just want to
No,
make
well, and I have a master class. It's going to be coming out soon. I've been doing it in person, which I love, but I just want more people to access it. And so it'll be like an online course so people can go at their own pace with tons of resources and all of these different ways to incorporate that wisdom into their daily life. So please go listen to that podcast. I love that conversation with our friend Brooke. But also masterclass is coming soon. So stay tuned.
I will also add in the show notes your link to join your email list.
Yes,
So if you
please.
guys are like, I just like, I don't know where to start, but like a great place if you don't know where to start, that's very non-invasive. Like this is what I like to do is just join someone's email list because you guys, I still get Old Navy's emails and I haven't been there for like years. So it's like for me, I'm like, at least I know that if I join their email list, I'll at some point when I get around to it, I like have them one click away. You and I have this very similar thing in common, and I hate the word grief. Like I feel like it's such a like a want word, but we have both lost people in our lives that were very significant.
Yeah.
And what I want, I'm trying to kind of get here to this is sometimes when we lose people, our whole entire life changes.
Yeah.
And that's really ultimately like how you've ended up here because you haven't always been an Enneagram guide. So
No.
can you kind of share with everybody how you got here
Sure.
and the correlation to that and your loss?
Whew, yeah. I'm like, how much time do we have now?
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I was a corporate gal professionally in corporate world for, that was my whole career. And I was introduced to the Enneagram in 2010. So it's been a minute now. But my brother passed away in 2013. And yeah, when that happened, like everything changed. I mean, it was just
And he was your only sibling, right?
correct. Yeah, my big brother. His name was Chris.
Like knowing that he's your big brother, because anyone here with like siblings, like the birth order, or
Yeah.
like that has a lot to do with like your feelings too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, just always looked up to him, and he was so like larger than life and like so charismatic and just yeah, just a wonderful human. And yeah, so when that happened, just life was different, and I I kept trying to do life the way I had always done it. I am doing dominant, an Enneagram term. So when that happened, I couldn't even like process. I couldn't even um I couldn't comprehend that he was no longer on this planet. And so I just went into go mode and overdoing. I mean, just doing every second. I mean, just like driving myself into the ground, working 80, 90 hours a week. I mean, just like there wasn't a moment where I wasn't doing. That was not going well. I started, I mean, it was just very unhealthy. I was in a very unhealthy space mentally, physically, emotionally. It got to a point where I got so burnt out. And again, this wasn't my company's fault. This was me using that as my outlet or my diversion from like really feeling what I needed to feel or like sitting with the
Mhm.
depths of that grief. But I had to leave. I mean, it wasn't going well. So I just left, which again, I'm a planner. I know what's next. I'm always working towards something. I've got like all of that is personality. And so yeah, then I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I took a year to like discern what was next. Crazily, before this, I'm a Christian, and I had gone on these mission trips to Panama. And on a mission trip in Panama in 2012, I I felt like I got this idea that I should become a missionary. And I was
What?
like, well, that's insane because I'm the last
Wait,
person anyone would think of as a saint by any means.
what
And I've got
was
this
it?
corporate career and like climate, and I'm just like, well, this is silly.
What was it where you're like, I think I could do that. Like, I'm gonna do this. Like, what was it? Like, was it the like you're in the jungle and you're like, this is kind of nice to be out here? What was it?
I I mean, I had been like building relationships within my church years before that. I didn't grow up in church, and so I came to it later. I came to it as an adult, and so there was a lot of like growing and learning at that time just about myself and in my spiritual life, um, which already started to change perspective of things. And then yeah, I just kept getting more and more involved with this church and with the people that were really important to me. Um, and then I wasn't even supposed to be on this mission trip. And then the person who was supposed to go found out that she was pregnant, and so she couldn't go. So she's like, "Can you go in my place?" And I love to travel, so I'm like, "Duh, yeah, of course I'll go." I've never gone on an international mission trip in my life, but sure, let's go to Panama. And it was just something about the work and the people. It wasn't even the work; it was the people. It was the simplicity of life, and it was just this one night I remember walking, and it was like on this little dirt path, and like you could see all of these stars, and I was in this new country, which I always love being in a new place, and it was just this like, oh my gosh, is this what I'm supposed to do? Because when I looked at the sky, it was like it was like stars. I hardly ever can see constellations, but to me, it was like, oh, I love to travel. I love people. I love, all of these things in my life felt like it was all coming together like a constellation where I could finally see like the picture that it was making. And it was then making the picture of me becoming a missionary, which I was like, which like I don't even like the word missionary because I'm like colonialism and making people believe something that, instead of their like, tribal heritage, like that's ridiculous and no one should ever do that. And so I'm just like, this doesn't even make sense.
Right. Oh my,
Oh my
that's,
gosh.
that's where I always feel like I can relate to because that's some shit I would do. Like being on a vacation and I'd be like in Italy, be like, I think I could be a missionary here. Like, I'm gonna do this. Do
Sure.
you think that, and I love your Enneagram guide wisdom on this.
Mm.
But what is it about when something like very tragic happens in our life? Usually, like something changes. Like people leave their job, they go start a business.
Yeah.
Like there's always like this shift in the change. And in my own experience, everyone has just said like, "Oh, you just look at things differently now." And yeah, obviously, obviously, and like your routine changes, like all of those things, but I feel like there's got to be something deeper to when divorce in our, like in our case, it's like we lost someone, someone died,
Yeah.
that makes everything just like a veil. I don't know if it's a veil that comes over or
Yes.
it feels like you're just placed in like a different body and you wake up one day and you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like this is
Yes.
it. So what is your Enneagram guide wisdom on when tragedy, trauma hits? Why in our professional life, like why does that change also happen there?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually when I start connecting with people or when people find me is in these spaces in their life. And it's in these liminal spaces, which this word liminal, it's like this threshold. Like think about it standing in a doorway where what's behind you, you can't go back to. Like it's no longer there. But you haven't stepped into what's next. You don't know what's coming, right? So in these spaces, it's like a tear that's also an opening. And Father Richard Rohr says, it's the only space where we can actually learn and grow.
In the
And
threshold.
Enneagram wise is in this liminal threshold space. Enneagram wise, it's because we've built these armors of personality since before we could even talk. And so we think it's who we are. We don't remember a time where this thing isn't us, right? And so it helps us to survive and then it helps us to thrive. And then we're like, ooh, I know how to use this armor to get exactly where I need to go, what I want, all the agenda. And then when life is like, ooh, pulls the rug out from under you and you're like, what? Like that's not even possible. I mean, it's like things that we can't even imagine, we can't plan for. Well, all that stuff that has worked doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't work anymore. And we keep trying to make it work and we feel like we're banging our head against a wall, which is
Yeah.
where the burnout comes from because it's like, but it's always worked. Then it's not working. And when it really isn't working, then we start to panic because it's like, well, then what do I do? How do I live life? Right. And I think in those panic modes, a lot of times people make big decisions because it's like, well, this isn't working. So I need to change this or I need to change this. But
Uh-huh.
if we go into those new spaces in the same way that we were in the old spaces, we're gonna run into the wall again and again and again and again.
Uh-huh.
So instead, what Enneagram wisdom helps us to realize is okay, for example, my doing. I also have feeling as a wisdom within me. I also have thinking as a wisdom within me. And if I could acknowledge those things and incorporate like use them for what they're made to be used for and use all of that intelligence and all of that wisdom that I have available to me, then I can enter into spaces in a way that's not habitual reactions. I can go, pause, breathe. Here's what's happening. And here is my intentional choice on how I want to enter into this space. And so
Um,
I think sometimes it takes us being ripped away from what we've known, from what's worked for us to be in these new spaces, maybe new professional spaces, to go, okay, I don't want to end up in the same way. I don't want to get burnt out again. I don't want to work 80 hours a week for this to happen. Like, what's available to me? What wisdom do I have where I can choose differently on how I want to live my life after this event?
oh, okay.
Yeah,
And what you said about when you started explaining this, and you were like, the things that we once did just don't work anymore.
right.
I just wanted to share like my experience with this is because it's very simple. And I think that anyone that's lost someone, especially like a parent, a spouse, or probably even in a divorce, or honestly, like a breakup too, is
Yeah,
me, my mom called me every single morning we talked. And so the first morning when that wasn't there, my routine completely changed. And that threw off going into my work
everything.
day, my
Yes.
entire work day. If so, when everyone is saying like everything changes. It's like, I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but like literally everything has changed. And that had caused, going into the burnout where you're like, well, shit, I'll just put my head down and work for 12 hours today in my
Right.
like, depressive little mode. And I love that, yeah, like just the way you explained it of like, this is who I've always been. So for me, I was always the daughter. I was always taken care of. I was always, she called me in the mornings. And so for that role to like, to not be there anymore affected the way that I showed up when, like, oh my gosh, like I haven't just gone to the coffee shop. Like I was in this like threshold of like, I don't know where to go
Right. Like,
or
what
what.
is that even? Well, and listen to what you're saying. Everything you're talking about is identity. Your
Yeah.
identity, what it was so tightly held up in, I am her daughter. Same thing with me. I mean, even it was my brother, but it's like I'm his little sister and we shared the same initials. So people called him CP and then I was CP2. And like it was just like this identity. And it's like, if this, and especially him being my older brother, so I literally had never known life without him, like you had never known life without your mom. And it's like, but so when that person isn't there, that my identity is so connected with who I am in relationship to this person, well then who the hell am I?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's that searching that the Enneagram really helps with is, who am I? Am I this armor? Am I these things that I do, or these things that I feel, or these things that I think, or what's that deeper? I mean, that's what I get to in my work with the Enneagram is like the essential self, the who we are that we can never not be, no matter who's here or who's not, no matter what's happening in the outside world, the me that can never not be me. We each have that. And I think if we can get more connected with that essential self within each of us, one, we can live more fully and freely because it doesn't depend on other people's reactions. It doesn't depend on situations. It doesn't depend on how other people see us. We know who we are.
Right.
And when we're connected with that in ourselves, then we get to see it in other people. It's like, ooh, this action, this behavior isn't even who this person is. This is all to protect from something else. Like, who's in there? And let me connect with that. And
Right.
that's where like deep, real relationship and authentic, genuine connection comes from.
I would love to hear your Enneagram guide wisdom on like your definition of identity. I feel like in
Mm,
2024, like everything you said, there's these roles of identity that we have in our families, in our relationships, right? Like you're a wife or you're a girlfriend or you're a daughter or you're a little sister. So there's like that level of identity. But then if you are a business owner or someone like in a group, like you have an identity of like working, the way
yeah.
you work. I also feel like, and this is something that's new in the last 20 years, but we have these identities on social media or
Yeah.
our websites. Sometimes even I get confused. Like it's so dramatic to say, like, who am I? Right. And so I would just love your explanation, what identity is.
Yeah, I use this analogy a lot, but to me it goes back to ease, which we were talking about a little bit earlier. So I am really fascinated with birds, and anytime I see a
Stop.
bird, it's
That's my sign. You just said it. That's my sign. This is on my desk. No, the coyote thing we were talking about? The birds are
yes,
mine.
yes,
So weird you said that. Okay.
yes. So I especially here in Colorado, like I just watch them. Like I don't know if it's like the mountain air or whatever, but these hawks, they just soar. Like they just, I just get mesmerized by them. And hummingbirds, we have this little garden in the front of our house, and we'll just, I mean, when a hummingbird comes, it's like my whole household, we're all like hummingbird, and we just are like still, we
Yep.
watch them. And that hummingbird is not thinking two thoughts about us, right? Nor the hawk. They're just being who and what they are created to be. So when I think of identity, it's like the ease when no one's looking, when we're not trying to be anything for anybody, when we're not shaming ourselves because we did something or didn't do something, or you know what I mean? When it's just the simple ease of being ourselves, I think, is our identity. Because I think of personality in contrast, like airplanes, right? Like it's this armor, this hard exterior, and all of this effort and all of this manufacturing trying to be something that they can never essentially be, right? The airplanes fly. That's awesome. I mean, that's kind of amazing that's possible, but they can
Still
never
don't
just like
understand how
take.
that works.
Yeah, right. Like it's a miracle. But like that they can just that I mean they planes can't just take off like birds can, or just like land or flutter around, or it's so much into it, right? To where this is our personalities too. We just work on them so hard. Think about when like somebody kind of bruises your ego, your personality. It's like, like how could they, or how, like it's so offensive because we've worked so hard to present ourselves in a certain way, to where when we're just being who we are, like our identity of our true self, our authentic self, our essential self, it's like that doesn't that doesn't trigger us in the same way, because it's like, but I just know who I am. I don't have to prove it to you. I don't have to make you understand. I can rest and I can have ease in just navigating life in the way that I was created to be. I mean, we are all so unbelievably different, and it's also purposeful. I don't have to be like you, and you don't have to be like me. And thank goodness there's not a lot of me's running around. You know what I mean? But I get to be me, and I'm part of like this much bigger, huge whole thing called the cosmos, history, like of all the things and all of time, all of these molecules and energy came together to create this one and only me. And you too, and every single human, and like what we bring and how we see is so vitally important for the wholeness for all of us.
Right.
And so I feel I wish we didn't all feel like we had to show up a certain way or be a certain thing. Or, and I mean, I do the same thing, but social media is not my love language. And so it's just like, oh yeah, like what do I say? How do I like, what's the thing? What gets people's attention? What la la la. It's just not my thing. And I will get down on myself because I'm like, how can all these people figure this out? And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I just get to be me. I can try my best and I can try things out, but like I just get to be me.
What do you think are some like signs if someone's like listening to this? And I mean, I think the first sign, and I've said this out of my own mouth, is like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like, I don't know who I am anymore. And I think that's like when you're like identity, right? What are
Yeah.
some other signs kind of like leading up to that threshold of, I'm going to say threshold because what needs to happen is everyone needs to go like to figure out like the Enneagram, what they're, who they are, and then we
Yes.
move into it. But like, I want to like decide like right before that, like right before those words even come out of your mouth where you're like, I don't know who I am anymore or what I'm supposed to be doing or like what is this life. Are there any other examples that you can give us of like those feelings, that way if
Mm.
anyone's listening to this and they're like, oh, is she talking to me, like that's exactly right.
I think the two biggest things are overdoing and resisting.
Okay.
So if you're overthinking, if you're over feeling like emotional, trying to feel other people's feelings the most, or trying to feel all the feelings so you can connect with people, if you're overdoing, um, all of that is a sign of like, why do I believe that I have to do this so intensely, so much force, so much effort? I think the other thing is to take a look at what you're resisting or ignoring like the plague.
What do you
So
like,
if
give me
you're
some examples.
so for example, when my brother passed away, I mean, I was all I was doing. I was just like a little machine. So I was not trying to think, and I was trying to do that so much I couldn't think and I couldn't feel. I was resisting feeling because I
Mhm.
was so scared of feeling the depths of what I actually felt that I thought I would drown and not come back. I mean, it was like a scary like black hole that I was afraid I couldn't come back from. And so it served me. I mean, I survived that part of it, but it took me a very long time to get there. it wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, or if you're resisting doing, I mean, if it's just like you've always kind of been even killed, got stepped down, and it's just like you can't move, you know, you're lethargic, you just can't go. Paying attention to those things, there's a reason that's happening. It doesn't have to be that way. It is what your psyche, what you have learned to do to survive in those spaces where you're in the depths.
Mhm.
But there are other ways to survive it that are much healthier for you, that you can get on the other side of that, not only sooner, it's not like a quick fix, but
Mhm.
just in a healthier way where you feel more whole while you're going through that.
Right.
um, because I feel like I know, like I did lose myself, and
Mhm.
I thought I was like actually going to lose myself. And I wish, I mean, honestly, that's why for me, grief and the Enneagram are so connected, is because I had learned about the Enneagram starting in 2010 and studied and read and gone to these boot camps and all of these things. Like I was all in. I knew it was true, but it wasn't until my brother passed away in 2013 that I started, um, the wisdom of it is what saved me. I
Yeah.
have to be honest. Like I was so low, so deep, so down. And so I did become a missionary. And this is when I moved to Guatemala. And that's when it was like, you don't know anybody. There is no distraction. You can't go anywhere. It's not the work that you've been doing before. Online doesn't work half the time. Um, you don't know the language. Like you just got to sit with this. And that's when I could see my habitual patterns with the Enneagram wisdom that I had learned. And when it was going in those directions that were scary for me, it was like I could draw on the map of the Enneagram and the wisdom from those other spaces of energy, from those other types, to go, this is part of me and I can incorporate this and I can show up as a full, whole human. I mean, it made me have to practice it.
Mhm. I feel like one of the, when you were talking about like the resistance, I just wanted to share like my like resistance. And listen, this is an honest space here. So I'm not saying like, oh, this is what I experienced and I don't experience it anymore. I'm telling you guys, like, this is what I've experienced, and like maybe I'm still experiencing this.
Oh, girl, me too. Waves and waves.
Lack of decision making is what I've called
Mm.
this. And when I tell you it, like, I mean, last summer, especially, like, I did not want to go on a trip. I got asked to go to a friend's bachelorette party in Texas. And I just told her, I was like, I can go. I'm open that weekend. Like, I can make it happen. But I don't want to make a decision. I don't want to buy a plane ticket. I don't want to get an outfit. I don't want to be gone that weekend. Lack of decision making on like things to do, places to go, relationships,
Yeah.
friendships, like what do I want to do with my like business? Like, I mean, anything that was a decision, like I felt paralyzed. And now hearing you say all of that, and I feel like I've been trying to figure like why am I like that? Like I don't understand that. And I was blaming being an only child on that. Because I was like, oh, because my mom like always gave me like choices and she was like, oh, have both. You don't need one. And so I thought it was like an only child thing. But what you're telling me is like it is an identity thing because I don't know who I am. So those decisions I feel so afraid to make because I'm not even sure of who I am to make an educated decision. And I also thought it was like a fear of making the wrong decision. And I know
Well,
like you can never make a wrong decision, but like
yes,
you get it.
but it's not so yes. And I think what may be at play here, and I don't know your core Enneagram type. We're gonna get there though. I can't wait to do the
Okay.
work together. But for some types, their move in stress is to go exactly to where you're talking about, to where they've always been the decisive. They could do it. They're action. They're go getters. They're future oriented. They're planning. Da 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 da. And then usually our stress move is feels very opposite to our natural, which already stresses us out more. And so people think of stress as this like negative connotation, but that stress move, with the Enneagram, when you're aware of it, when you can predict it, because all of this is predictable, habitual pattern behavior, then you can go, but what's there for me that I need that I don't have in my normal space? So it may sound like you're usually go, 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 go. Then you feel paralyzed to make a decision, but that can also calm things down because it's like instead of just going and going through the motions and going through it, it's like, oh, if I can't do that, then I'm kind of stuck in this space where I have to feel, I have to think, I have to slow down and kind of be where I'm at instead of on to the next thing. And that actually can help balance us out if that's not our norm. So,
Right.
like for me, I'm go, go, go. The type that I move to when I'm stressed is doing repressed. So that's when I feel like, oh my gosh, like all the stuff I normally do, I just can't do it, which stresses me out more at the beginning. And then
Right.
it's like, oh, because that type also is all about feeling.
Uh-huh.
They're feeling dominant. It's all about seeing the beauty and the authenticity around you, which instead of just going and getting it done, it's like, oh wow, look at this tree, look at this bird, look at, you know what I mean? And it balances me back out to where I can get there again. There's a lot of crying involved usually
Oh, yeah.
with
Uh,
my
yeah.
particular move. But yeah, so I think what you're talking about could also be part of your stress move.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like piecing this together. And I'm like, okay, one, like if you've gone through grief, loss, anything like that, there's one like element. But also if you're feeling any of these things, resistance, lack of decision making, all the things we said,
Overdo
I
over anything.
right. I feel like I'm sure there's a million ways to get, we're going to use the doorway, the threshold doorway. There's a
Yes.
million ways to get onto the other side. But what I truly feel like I've gathered from just working with you, listening to you, understanding what your like school of thought and your practices are, the Enneagram is almost like this secret cheat code where it's like, oh, you're doing all these things. If you kind of go through this, like there's like another side. Like maybe there's other ways that you can get to the other side, but it feels like it's this thing. If you kind of like figure out who you are, then all of these other things on the other side will become easy. Like don't even think about the things on the other side. First, figure out like who you are first.
Yes.
So
Yes,
that's like
girl.
what I'm seeing is it's like this cheat code. It's like the little secret hack, the thing that no one else is doing. And as I said before, I mean, everyone's probably heard the word Enneagram. And if they haven't, I don't feel like people truly understand what it is, which makes me feel like it's this very elite luxury item, this secret little sauce, which I know we want to get it out in the world and we want everyone to know about it. But
Yeah.
everything is like people don't know about it.
Well,
They don't know how to
people
do
want quick fix. People
right.
want, immediate, give me this,
Mhm.
red blue pill or, give me the thing. And a lot of people will even say, like, if they've taken a test, they're like, I did the Enneagram. And I'm like, the Enneagram isn't something you can just
Dude.
do or like you did, you know what I mean? And so and you don't even remember like what the result of that was.
Right. Yeah.
Most people don't because it's not incorporating that wisdom into their everyday life. So I mean, anyone who has really invested the time to understand this and understand these elements of it and practice it in their daily life, it has been, I mean, for everyone I've encountered, it's been transformational for them.
Mhm.
But it's, I think that's why people resist, is because it's not immediate, it's not fast food, it's like slow food movement.
Right.
It's not the hamburger through the drive through, it's like there are layers and layers. And I mean, I have an Enneagram learning or awakening every single day for myself. Like I've been sitting this now for almost 15 years, not to say that like you have to do that, but it's just like, oh my gosh, and it just showed up like this, and oh my god, you know what I mean? And it
Right.
just, every little micro awareness that comes from it
Mhm.
helps me to love myself more, which helps me be able to receive love better, which helps me be able to love other people better. I mean, it's not just that, but I mean, it's a big part of it. It helps me show up in relationships differently. um, it helps me be able to weather storms in a different way, than just being like, I'm out of here, f this.
Right. Right. Right.
It's just yeah.
So I just want to like tag on what you just said because I think that that's such a good reminder. Is like just because you've been like learning about this for 15 years doesn't mean it takes 15 years to identify your identity.
No.
So this is a very
No.
blunt question.
Sure.
I would love your answer. So how long does it take to get to know yourself? But like how long do you feel it does truly take? Because I don't want people to think that daunting, like mountain that you can't climb, that no one has access to, that it's very expensive, that it takes years, like
Yeah.
in a really simple form. What is that investment in being like, okay, I'm here, I'm in the threshold, and I am gonna commit to like learning my identity and who I am so that I can, move forward. How long, what am I looking at? How long does that take?
Yeah, I mean, different people approach it in different ways. So it's not a blanket statement. I mean, I went to a course in 2010 when I was introduced, and that day, I mean, the person went through all the nine types, kind of a brief description of all the nine types. And as soon as she started talking about my type, I'm like, that that's it. I mean, it like there's no denying it. You know what I mean? For me, I my approach is a little bit different because back then sounds like so long ago. I guess it was. But now that people have heard the Enneagram and there's so much stuff online about it and so much on social media and tests, I don't like to start with types because so many people already think they know their type that then they start using Enneagram wisdom to try to just prove that.
Mhm.
And they're kind of like blocked off from the other stuff.
Right.
And a lot of people use their type as an excuse, like, well, yeah, of course I did that because I'm a so and so. And I'm
Mhm.
like, but it's who you're not. That's actually who you're not, right? So I started more with the centers of intelligence of thinking and feeling and doing and finding out what that dominant center is and what that repressed center is. Because if you know the dominant and repressed center, that gives you a hypothesis of what your Enneagram type is.
Mhm.
And so usually, I mean, I do a master class and that takes about three classes.
Mhm.
Um, and so that gives a good hypothesis. But then I still don't stop with going, okay, well then, here's your type. One, I would never tell people they have to identify that. They don't have to. They are invited to identify that for themselves. And so when they identify that, but knowing your core type is just part of it. When you know the other types and you know what's available to you with all of your moves, because we're like dynamic human beings, we don't stay static, which a lot of like personality tests are like, you're a this or you're a that. And it's like a lot, maybe some of the time, maybe a lot of the time, but not all of the time. And so when I'm showing up totally differently, why is that? The Enneagram gives you that as well if you want to continue to learn
Right.
that stuff and then learn what you can use from that to show up in the way that you choose. Like you're free to choose. That's the whole thing, is you're not stuck in this habitual behavior. You're free to choose. So i I know I'm not really answering your question. I mean, to me,
You are, yeah.
after probably like three courses, you'll have a pretty good idea of what type you lead with.
Mhm.
And usually, a lot of people will see this as daunting time investment at the beginning. Once they get into it with me, it's never enough time. It's like, but can we just do? I just did a team training and it was like an hour and a half for like the intro with the team with a whole bunch of like exercises. I love like activities and getting them involved. And they're like, we're done, it's over. Like that literally felt like 30 seconds, not 90 minutes. And so
Right.
once they're into it, then they always want more time.
Because I'm sure too, you start to think of just like I did with the lack of decision making. Like you start to think of examples and you're like, wait, what does this mean? Or like you start to identify it. And I think for me, that was like one of those things where I'm like, not everyone questions every decision they make all the time. Like, interesting. So I love that you said that. And that makes plenty of sense. Like it takes some time. And you mentioned that like when people work with you, hands-on work, but like examples, and you're talking with them. And so it's not like a check the box, it's a like listening and feeling. And I
Yeah, it's
mean,
like, how is your body physically reacting to what I'm saying right now? Like, how often do we sit there and go, wow,
ooh,
I just heard that on the news. How is my body physically reacting? Like,
right,
never, you know what I mean? But if we did, there is so much wisdom. Our bodies are talking to us all the time. And just
right.
even like your example of like this trip, and it's like, but I don't, and it's like to just pause and be like, I physically, like, what is my body physically telling me right now? I mean, that's just one bit of the wisdom, but yeah, to be in those experiences, one, to do it on your own, I think is huge. Then to do it with the team dynamic. And when you start to awaken to how everybody experiences what you consider the same thing so differently based on
Mm,
how they view the world, how they engage with life, that that starts to really build the compassion for yourself of why you do it that way, and then compassion for others going, I would never think that in a million years. I would never see it that way. But what can I learn from that? How can my perspective be expanded? How can my life be enriched
Right.
by knowing how other people are experiencing this that I just could never understand unless
Right.
I'm in relationship with them, which is why that deep connection and relationship can be so important with Enneagram work, is to cultivate compassion for the
Oh,
world.
two things I just thought of.
Yes.
First, the thing that you had just said of, other people, right? Like they look at it a different way.
Yeah.
Think that opens up such an interesting layer of vulnerability because now you're at the point, like if you have multiple people in the scenario, so like we'll use the example of like the bachelorette party, right? Thank God the bride had compassion and
Yeah.
understanding of she's not coming to my bachelorette party, right? But it also forces people, I feel like, to be vulnerable and just honest because
Yes.
how many times have we been like, I've never once thought about that. Like, we work with a coworker and we're like, why do they do that the way that they did that? Like, I cannot
Right.
believe that. But if you have, like, if you see it differently and you understand where they're coming from, I think that
Yes.
there's this level of honesty and vulnerability that's like, I'm not lying to you because that like to get out of something. I'm not
Yeah.
like I'm being honest with how I'm feeling and you're being honest back with me of like seeing
Yes.
how I'm looking at it. And so on that note, I want to kind of talk a little bit about how just knowing your identity, working through with the Enneagram in a workplace, how
Yeah.
that can benefit you.
Yeah. Well, I think even just the example that you gave, with a lot of work teams, I work on changing like, tell me what I am not seeing to like, tell me what I'm not seeing. Right. Because like, I know that I've been in situations where it's so clear to me. It's like, it's so clear. This is the direction. That's also a part of my type. It's just like, beeline, I got it. Let's do it. What are we waiting on? Um, to where I'm just like, I don't understand where you other people are coming from or like what you don't get.
Mhm.
But changing that, what's behind that to true curiosity of like, I don't understand. Like, please help me to understand. Because when, to me, with teams, with companies, when it's like joining forces.
Mhm.
Instead of you have to see it the way I see it or I have to see it the way you see it, it's this is what I see and this is what you see. Wow, look how much fuller that picture is. Like, that's more of the whole picture. And if we have more of the whole picture, we can actually reach more people with whatever service or product we're offering, instead of just reaching the few people that may see it the way we see it.
All right.
And so I just did this exercise that I loved with a board of directors. It was a new, they were coming in for a new term, pretty large board, about 19 people, and the staff members. And we took their mission statement of their organization, and I just took one word of their mission statement, and individually um, I had them connect with what their thoughts were about that one word, what their feelings were about that one word. And then when they heard that one word, what physical sensations came up. Then, and everybody wrote it, nobody put their name. Then we laid it all out on a table and I had them all take a look so that they could see what are the things that other people also feel, also think that they do, and what are the things that they could have never imagined, um just to be like, that's just the people in this room, that's just the 25 people in this room, much less all the people that you're serving. What is their experience of that one word that is central to the work that y'all are doing? And I think when we start to expand our understanding that it's so much beyond us, we're part of it and we're integral to it, but it's so much more than that. And if we can include that and integrate that into the work that we're doing, then we start to see how purposeful we are. We
Mhm.
start to see how purposeful our teammates are. Of like, I can't see it like that. I could never come to it like that, but you can. And wow, like what that's going to add to this is going to make it so much richer for everybody. You're going to reach people I could never reach. I think when we just start to see that our differences are purposeful and we don't have to fit a mold and we don't have to make people do it or see it the way that we do, there's enough room and space. We're in a place of abundance instead of scarcity, and we can integrate it all. I call it the diversity of perspective, especially with teams. It already exists,
Mm.
but some people can be so overbearing with their way is the way. They're just narrow focused that other people don't even think they can contribute what they see or what they have that only they have that they can contribute, and then we're missing it, you
Right.
know. So I just think it makes it just increases understanding and it increases reach.
Yeah.
And then if you're missing a piece, then you also know who to hire. Because
Yeah.
it's like, wow, like we're all doers or we're all thinkers, but we're getting nothing done, or we're all feelers, but there's no action being taken, or we're not thinking on how to get through this. Okay, who do we need in our team for this? And then when everybody is seen for the value that they bring just by them being who they essentially are, I want to go to work at a place like that. Like, uh, who wouldn't want to work at? So I think it helps with hiring. I think it helps with retention. I think it helps with onboarding. I think it helps with team dynamics,
Right.
with communication, with reach. For your target audience.
Right.
To me, it's a no brainer.
It's like the as you're like saying all those examples, I'm like, it's the cheat code. Like it's the secret sauce. It's like the
Yes,
thing that has nothing to do with if you own a tire shop or a cosmetic surgery place, it's like anyone could use this, like even in relationships, obviously. But I love everything that you're saying about how it like benefits teams and how it like can, change dynamics and how it works, but also too it just goes to show you like it's wherever you work, it's like so much bigger than that, but it kind of
yes,
makes it fun, like it kind of makes it a little bit easier, like if you just know what to expect and who you are and who your brand is, it makes putting everything else together like you could even go into a whole thing where it's like, who are our consumers, like
that's
what
it.
do they receive, like it goes on so
Yes.
many different levels.
Yeah. Well,
So
I'm working with a team right now where we're also talking about defense mechanisms, because each type has their own defense mechanism, and conflict response. We all respond to conflict differently. So, in those team dynamics, too, of not only how do we normally show up, how can we contribute, where's like that value that, I call it generative contributions. When we're working and contributing from our essential self, it can't be depleted. It can't be exhausted. Like it just is like this wellspring, and so we can't get burnt out. And
yeah,
so not only that, but it's also like when we're not from that place and when we are defensive and when we are, instead of going this person is the problem, it's like the way they're responding is causing this issue, and this is how it triggers me because of the way I respond. So
right,
let's look at these behaviors, see
right,
where that's coming from. Already there's compassion there, so our response to it is different.
right.
It doesn't justify behavior, but helps us to understand it and understand how to manage that a little bit better. Not by changing ourselves, but just knowing how we show up in those spaces.
To put that in a basic B form, I'm going to give my version of that, like the compassion
Yes, please.
is it, and I am going to take the master class. I need to get like all of my like friends, like anyone, relationships, all that stuff. Like if everyone just did this would be
Yes,
great.
please.
What it's
World peace.
done is it's taught me so far to learn to keep my mouth shut. And
Mm,
like I'm very sarcastic. So when someone has a comeback and they like their defense mechanisms, like when we're like butting heads on something and they say something, it used to be my normal reaction to give like a very sarcastic comment,
sure.
or, like, like put on my Beth Dutton like
Yep.
armor and be like, what,
Yep.
you know?
Last word.
And
Mm-hmm.
now what it's done is it's like taught me to like keep my mouth shut. And I will sit there and I will think, it's because they don't know how to use Trello. It's because this is too much. Like, it's not me. Like, I'm
This
not,
doesn't have anything to do with
it has
me.
nothing to
Yes.
do with me. But when I have kept my mouth shut, it's like I don't identify that weakness. And that I just have like this understanding of like, okay, if I know this about them and they clearly don't know that I know this about them,
Yeah.
what can I do maybe a little bit differently to like approach this, because like we can't change who we are. So even just the power of one person having that, like not everyone in your office,
Yes.
like of course that's amazing. I hope everyone's office, I
Oh
hope
my
you
gosh.
listen to this and you go to your boss and you're like, we need to do an Enneagram training
Yes.
masterclass with Calley Welborn. If you do, message to Calley, tell her Adrian sent you. But I hope everyone listening to this like goes to their like whatever they do for a living and says, we need to do this. But even just the power of one person
One person.
having this knowledge, because I've been in conversations or out with people who are like really obsessed with the Enneagram, like, oh my God, that is such a six thing to do. Like they like fit it into all these conversations,
Yeah.
or
It's
it's
easy to do. I get it.
kind of like when you're like when I lived in LA, everyone was telling you they're vegan. Like you knew it. Like it was just like, got it, understand.
They're like holding a sign.
Yeah, like they just would fit it into every single conversation. So there's people like that, but it's like just one person having that knowledge can like spread it to everybody else unknowingly. Like it doesn't need to be
That's
a thing where
I
you,
had I had someone in one of my master classes. He was amazing. He actually took it twice because not only do you learn about your type and your moves, but then you start learning about the people in your life and other people and it all. Anyway, so but he went back to work where he was having a lot of issues and just being aware of how his type showed up. He's like, oh, like because he was trying to beat people over the head with what he felt was just like common sense, and he was the first to talk. And so one of the first things he changed was that in every meeting he was the boss of the meet, he was the leader, but he would speak last. And he learned so much. He didn't say I've been doing Enneagram, I'm doing this, I'm going to try to change this. Just the next meeting he showed up in, he didn't speak up first. It was like, here's the thing that's on the table, and he let everybody else speak first. And he came back and he was like, Hallie, I had no idea. Like they had so many ideas. They had so much but what had happened before was he would be the first to speak. He could have an intimidating presence, his type, which he wasn't aware of, had no idea. So as soon as he said something, nobody felt that they could say something different. Uh, and so then he was pulling them along with his ideas that they were like, this isn't the best idea, instead of them like being on board with like, this is our team decision.
right?
And when he let them speak, he's the one who learned. Then they felt valued. They felt, I mean, this whole team dynamic by this one person changing one thing from one thing they learned out of our 9 weeks together. And it changed the whole dynamic of his team. It was, I mean, a lot happened after that. He'd be like, Kelly in this and Kelly in this. And oh my God. I mean, it was just like, we would like geek out about it. But that's what started it.
I I hope I don't butcher this when I say this. But now as I think like my next era of life I should get into politics. I just feel really
Ooh,
inspired by
I'd
the
vote for
recent
you
election.
100.
And I also have my like Jackie Kennedy like,
Yes.
tweet outfit on. But I can't, I mean, I swear I did not steal this quote from someone. So if someone finds this quote and they're like, girl, Maya Angelou said that. Like, I can't, I promise you, I don't know if someone said this, but I do not think that that you, me, one person, I don't believe that we can change the world. I don't think you can, but I do think that you can change your world. And maybe your world is your workplace, your town, your relationships. And if you can change your world, then I believe that if everybody changes their own world, that's how we change the world, right?
Totally. I agree. And I think it starts with not going out to change, but really looking in to say, who am I? And accepting and receiving the gift of who we are and then showing up authentically is what actually initiates the change. It's not like I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to change this. It's like I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be honest with myself, and I'm going to live as wholly and fully and balanced as I possibly can in my life and in my interactions. And then I feel like that's the ripple effect.
Mhm.
That's why I talk about ease. It's not going out and forcing change. I mean, girl, I was really good at making things happen. But when I was like disabled from that because I was in my stress move and I was like, I can't do anything like how I normally did it. But when I started to being open and receiving, what had been there all along, that's the stuff I could have never thought of.
Right.
The stuff I could have never imagined. My family came that way. Like
Mhm.
my family now, my husband and my son. I it, I just think if we can live more fully in that way, that's what initiates the change instead of going out being like, I'm gonna make it happen.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um, oh my gosh, I'll take this pause out, but you had just said something. Oh God, you
Sorry,
were
just keep going.
talking about, no, 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 you're good. I was like, remember this, remember this, remember this. Um, oh, talking about like not forcing the change or like waking up in the morning and just like being honest like to who you are. A couple things that like came to mind is if you're someone who has said like I don't know who I am anymore, or like you have a hard time getting out of bed, or like you have a hard time getting motivated to like go work or do the things that you need to do next. I do think that those maybe are all those signs of like the like that we talked about earlier. And I
Yeah.
just like anyone that's listening to this, and when I re-listen to this, I'm talking to me. Okay, this is for you. Is like those are those little like hints where it's like, girl, you've just lost your way. Like you just like kind of went off the like the track a little bit. You just it's not that you lost yourself. Like she's still there. You just
Yeah.
kind of like went down this little trail and path. Like she's through the trees over there. But like different life experiences change who you are. And in that identity, like it's kind of like I feel like a scar, right? Like the scar tissue.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
just
It's not
kind of
even like lost your way. It's part of the way.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
especially these things that happen that we can't control or make happen or not happen. It's it's part of the way. It may not be the way we wanted it, definitely not the way we wanted it, but it's part of the way. So it's, I think what it is, I mean, Enneagram is all about presence and awareness. So when you wake up in the morning going, I don't know who I am anymore, literally that's the moment where it's like, what am I feeling right now?
Mhm.
Let me be honest with myself about what feelings am I feeling right this second. At our house, I got a feeling wheel pillow, like a throw pillow for our couch. And my son is great, but he'll just hold it up. Mom, what are you feeling right now? And we look at the feeling wheel because a lot of times we can't even identify that. But it's waking up in the morning before you even get out of bed going, what is my body physically telling? I mean, because that it in that all we can be is who we are in every single moment. Like that's why presence is so key to Enneagram work. Because if we are thinking about who we want to be or what's in the future or what happened before or how we responded to that, if we're judging every decision we've made, if we're giving commentary to why we feel how we feel and justifying, none of that is like what's happening right
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
And so you're right. Like we can't not be us. We are us. It's
Mhm.
just getting attuned and returning home to the core of who that is by being present and aware with ourselves in every moment.
Ooh, girl.
Yeah.
My gosh.
I
Okay.
know, which like I wish I lived my life like that every single day. I'm like, dang, Calley, you got some work to do, girl. Me.
I mean, everything like everything that you're saying, I just like am obsessed with. This is the problem with us. Like we could literally talk for hours about this.
I know.
So first off, like one, I think to kind of wrap up like what we've gone through, like really like what I've gained from our conversation today is who are we? Your identity. I feel like we've addressed some ways of like if you don't know or if you don't know that you don't know yet, like here are some signs like you're on
Yeah.
the way. But also this is the solution. Like I said, the secret sauce, the cheat code. Like I really feel like everyone, if you're like when you're listening to this, like this is the secret thing. I think even going into the holidays and the new year, like the typical, like
Yes,
all about around all
especially
of these people and family and events.
identity with family and roles and yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you might not have the answers right now of how to like deal with your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving, but there is a solution. And I think, like I said, all of this information is going to be in the show notes to connect with Callie. And I'm going to be taking her master class. I'm excited for it. So if there's anybody else out there that like wants to be an accountability partner and do it with me, reach out to me too. We'll all take Callie's master class
Please, I
together.
would love it.
Do you want to pimp yourself out and tell all of us where they can find you? And I'll also put this stuff in the show notes.
I am so bad at that. And so, yes, I will. I just want to say quickly, too, grief is a universal experience. And so, if you're experiencing that right now, please know that you are not alone. There are other people who have experienced it, are experiencing it. I know it's not the same. It's not the same relationships. Everybody grieves differently. But please know that you're not by yourself, that you're not lost, even if you may feel so. That there are people at the grocery store that you encounter, even if you're not grieving or have experienced that, or at work or in traffic, who are. And we can show up with compassion for ourselves and each other in those spaces. So thank you for talking about this, Addie, like talking about this is happening. This is happening all around us. This is happening at work. This is happening in business. And we're still trying to live our lives. And it's hard, but it's not impossible. And the Enneagram can definitely help. So let's connect with that. And the way you can do that, to get back to what you were saying, is undercurrent.life. So undercurrent Enneagram consulting, go undercurrent.life. Website has a lot of resources. My Instagram at undercurrent Enneagram. I have different highlights for every single type. So if you're like really want to get into that type stuff, that has that. But there's so many things that people don't think about with the Enneagram. That's the stuff I want to highlight there, as well as on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So please reach out, especially, I mean, if you want team training or anything individual. Again, the course is coming up soon. So I'm just so excited. I want everyone to know that you have the freedom to choose. You have the freedom of choice to be your most authentic, alive, full self. And I'm so excited for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Callie. You were the perfect episode, like refreshing to get back into it. And so I can't thank
I'm
you
so
enough.
thankful you're doing this. You're amazing. Thanks for having me.
Cut. Cut.
And scene, Vogue.
Oh my gosh. I was like looking at the clock. I'm like, dude, I could talk to her about so,
I don't
so
even know
many
when we
things here.
really
But
actually
I do
did
feel
start
like
talking.